love looking at the many times Konami has retrained older Yu-Gi-Oh monsters and archetypes in attempts to make them more useful, or at least give us some nostalgia, but for every 10 that we cover, it seems that Konami retrains another 20. Not only do notable monsters from the anime or previously meta-relevant ones get retrains, but even just minor vanilla monsters from the early sets that only have nostalgic value because you opened them in dozens of booster packs get retrains. So with basically any monster at risk of being retrained, we wanted to give our takes of monsters that deserve to get a retrain that haven't gotten one yet. For a quick refresher on what a retrain is, it's when a monster gets a new version of itself, usually with an effect that's better than what it used to have and the same or similar stats to its original form. We'll go over what makes these monsters notable or obscure enough to get a retrain, and what we would like the potential retrains to do. In fact, with how retrain happy Konami has gotten over the years, I'll even make the bold prediction that these cards will get retrained someday. So if you're watching this in the distant future, let us know how close or wrong we were with our discussions. And to help me theorycraft are my fellow Yu-Gi-Oh tech masters, Sam from Dungeon Dive Bar.
I want my Beaver Warrior retrain. Give it to me, Konami. I want it to be terrible.
And Professor Oats.
Wait, I was supposed to have a witty one-liner for this. Sorry, y'all.
Now, let's contemplate the top 10 Yu-Gi-Oh monsters that should get retrains. Number 10, Masked Beast Desgardius. Loomis and Umbra are somewhat prominent figures in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. They had one notable tag duel against Yugi and Kaiba atop a skyscraper, and that's it. But they made it into Duel Links, and because they were in Duel Links, their ace monster got a cutscene, making Masked Beast Desgardius more notable than it was way past 2007, and it was never really notable to begin with. But I wanted to make him work, his effect was cool. You had to special summon him as if he was a tribute summon using two monsters, one of which was a specified normal monster that was related to the mask theme of Loomis and Umbra's decks. Now that he's summoned, you have a 3300 attack point beater that was stronger than most boss monsters at the time, and that was mostly your reward. But if he was sent to the graveyard, you can activate a Mask of Remnants from your deck, which takes one of your opponent's monsters, but as an equip card, so they can easily undo it with Mystical Space Typhoon, but still, very cool effects. The clear issue is you have to run a lot of bad cards with him, specifically the normal monsters, which were only searchable with generic recruiters, and the Mask of Remnants, which does nothing except shuffle itself back into the deck if not used with Desgardius' effect. However, I made a deck around this guy in Duel Links using Loomis and Umbra's skill, which fixed some of the issues. The skill puts one of its tribute requirements on the field if you shuffle a card from your hand back into the deck, so the retrain would speed it up by incorporating this effect into it.
You have been on the Masked Beast retrain since, we've met.
Do something that's like the Duel Links skill. Just a bit of history. I played against this deck quite a bit. When MrTopTenList and I were playing Duel Links, he made a Desgardius deck, which is so much better than it ever was in the TCG because they had a skill called Mask Tribute. And just how the Onomat skill that was so good in Duel Links is very similar to Onomatopera. You could have that kind of advantage spell like Melody of Awakening Dragon or Machina Redeployment, but for Masked Beast stuff. And it summons a token whose name is treated as Grand Tiki Elder. And then there you go. Have a new guy you can search. And then its thing was when it dies, you equip Mask of Remnants, which is a snatch steal. You could just cut out the brick and say, when it dies, do a snatch steal, and then something while it's on the field, or just make a mask retrain.
I'd say reveal the Desgardius retrain, shuffle a card back into the deck, summon the token.
Another option is, it needs two tributes, one of them as the original name. So one thing you could do is have a Grand Tiki Elder retrain, but part of its effect, it summons a token whose name is treated as Melkid the Four-Faced Beast, and then you'd have a Melkid the Four-Faced Beast retrain, and its effect would summon a token called Grand Tiki Elder. So you'd have an OG name in rotation, but you wouldn't run any of the OG cards.
Melkid the Five-Faced Beast.
With most of the masks that the rare hunters used being equip cards, maybe the retrained Desgardius could also prevent equip cards from being destroyed if it's sent to the graveyard for the turn, so Remnants or the Remnant stand-in could be protected.
I think we need a Mask Restrict retrain too, where it's just a floodgate for everybody. Neither player can special summon from the extra deck. That's it.
No, God no. It's a decent floodgate, just have the original.
Also, keep the retrain a level 8 Dark Dark Fiend, since that has some searching support with cards like Dark Spirit Mastery and Doomdog Octhros. Would he be good? Probably not, but it would be a fun gimmick, at least for me. Number 9, Dekoichi the Battle-Chanted Locomotive. Dekoichi was such a staple of old decks. It was a flip monster that let you draw a card when flipped, and it was a dark attribute monster, so it was good in chaos decks, which were all the rage back in the day. It also has an extra effect where you can draw additional cards if copies of its companion monster, Bokoichi the Frightening Car, are on the field, but no one ever played that monster. A lot of people forget about this part of the effect. People just wanted the free draw and a dark monster. So for how much of an icon Dekoichi was, I wanted to retrain him. One issue though, he's a flip monster, and anytime flip monsters get retrained, they stay flip monsters, and sometimes become even worse. There was the retrain for Maneater Bug, Hane Hane, Maneater Bug again, Magician of Faith, all still flip monsters, and except for the second Maneater Bug retrain, all of them became a higher level with stronger effects, but the high level was a horrible trade-off since tribute setting a monster is basically an unviable strategy. Flip monsters are just too slow for the modern game, even if they're level 4 or lower, unless you really make them busted and give them an archetype with support. I don't understand why they feel they need to keep old flip monsters as flip monsters for retrains, but that's likely Dekoichi's fate if he gets one. However, if Konami miraculously lets Dekoichi have a retrain without making it a flip monster, I think they should focus on the fact that he's a train. Train monsters have since become a full-on series in Yu-Gi-Oh! And can be played with Earth Machine decks, so just fit Dekoichi's new effect into that. Give him effects that search or synergize with trains or Earth Machines, maybe even make him a level 10 if you need to. And I know he's a dark attribute monster, but you can just change him to Earth, or make him like those Dark Machina monsters that work with the Earth Machina. And if you need any extra reason why Dekoichi should be accepted into the Train family, Anna, the Train duelist from Zexal, has specific lines for Dekoichi and Bokoichi in Duel Links, so let's bring Dekoichi home to the Earth Machines.
Okay, originally I wasn't super jazzed about the idea because Dekoichi has that like old random dark machine vibe that could work with like the Bandit Keith retrains, which were cool and then just stopped. But as soon as you mentioned that Anna says it in Duel Links, that's enough for me. Make it Earth Machine support, make it a train. I play Earth Machine. I just want more cards. And you know, maybe something that works with Revolving Switchyard because that card's super good and has like very few targets. Like after I summon Pegasus Stampede, I'm like, Machina Gear Frame in defense mode with no effect?
We could go full tilt. Let's update him. He's now Dekoichi the Battle-Chanted Superliner, and you still get to draw the card, you still get a plus when he's summoned, but instead, needed Bokoichi, you need Revolving Switchyard because he's being deployed. Then you get to draw an extra card or do a search or something.
Draw 2 might be a little too much, but if this card is special summon, draw a card. I don't know if I'd just run that, but if it had like another effect with like detaching his material or level modulation, because that's what all trains do. I can do stuff with them.
I'd also like to see an effect on the new Dekoichi that lets him summon a bunch of Bokoichis from the deck, which seems dangerous since you can link them off or go into sprite things, but I just want to make sure that Bokoichi does not get forgotten this time. Maybe just retrain him too.
Can I just read out the flavor text of Bokoichi for a second? A freight car that is exclusively for Dekoichi. It can transport anything, but most cargo arrives broken. It's just bad at its job.
You know what I like? That the artwork on Bokoichi is the reverse of Dekoichi's artwork.
Oh yeah, you could see in the tail end, that's just Dekoichi hanging out.
Yeah, and there's Bokoichi on Dekoichi's art.
Number 8, Terra the Terrible. This has always been one of those random Legend of Blue Eyes normal monsters that I've liked for no discernible reason. I think it's his name and pose. Like this guy's just laughing at you and looking down. The disrespect. And what makes him so terrible? He's as strong as Hitatsumi Giant.
Known as a Swamp Dweller, this creature is a minion of the Dark Forces. Ah, there we go. Swamp, frog archetype. Let's go.
But there's a bigger reason I feel he could be retrained. His Japanese name is Majin Terra, otherwise known as Terra the Jin. He's been a part of the Jin series of monsters this whole time. They accidentally gave Terra the Summoned Skull treatment, where it has a word in its Japanese name that became the name of an eventual archetype, but they named it something else in English. So for Summoned Skull, now they have to have a line of text to say that it's a part of a greater archetype due to the early localization. However, Jins are just a series and not a full-on archetype, so Terra doesn't have to worry about that yet. Jins were monsters that could be used in ritual summons to give the ritual monsters extra effects, like drawing cards or preventing targeting, but still never bring back Releaser. She turned ritual monsters into Vanity's ruler and locked the opponent out of special summoning turn 1. The rest of them were cool though, and I liked Releaser's design at least. I think a retrain of Terra could be related to more of those ritual djinns. My initial thought was to make him like the Incantations or Transonic Bird, where it's ritual support in the form of a ritual monster. The djinns are technically a series, not an archetype, so give them a ritual spell and maybe another card or two that ties them together as an archetype. It's hard to make ritual support since one wrong move and it becomes too busted, but if he's not a full-on ritual monster, just make Terra a new djinn that is not an unfair floodgate. Since he's laughing at you, maybe any monster ritual summoned with him turns into something like a masquerade dragon and burns the opponent every time they activate something. Is that too broken? I just wanted to do something with the laughing at you motif. Maybe he just prevents you from being affected by spell cards for something more mild.
So, wait a second, hear me out. This is really dumb, but you know how there's a whole theme of random fusion substitute monsters from the olden days? There's two sets of djinns. There are the ritual djinns and the completely unrelated exceed djinns. So why don't we add some fusion djinns just to bother people?
Terror the Terrible Djinn. You could mill another djinn to the graveyard and boost it when it's used for a djinn monster for Xyz material. And then we get the djinn that supports Jinzo.
And if Terra seems like too obscure of a normal monster to retrain, just remember that they retrained Dharma Cannon into a trap card out of nowhere, so anything is possible with early vanilla monsters.
I think we should take any card that was featured prominently in Dark Duel stories and retrain it. Who wants their Disc Magician retrain to Blu-ray Magician?
Wave Magician, MP4 Magician, AVI Magician.
Number 7, Malice Doll of Demise. We discussed this card on our first weird retrain list, since it is technically not a retrain as far as the real life card game is concerned. It's based on Doll of Demise from the manga and anime, being a normal monster that Pandora, or Arcana in the dub, tributed to use the effect of the continuous spell Ectoplasmer. So the card game skipped printing the normal monster and just gave us a different retrained Doll of Demise, whose effect revives it after being sent to the graveyard by a continuous spell's effect, in reference to it being used as fodder for Ectoplasmer. This version was later used once in the GX anime. Regardless of the origin, we only had one Doll of Demise in real life, but it came out towards the end of the Duel Monsters era, so its effect is slow and outdated. Why not retrain him to fit the speed of the modern game? There's a few directions you could go. The most basic retrain would make him not have to wait until the next standby phase to be revived, or have the effect trigger when he goes to the graveyard from anywhere via continuous spell effect, not just the field. So if he gets discarded because of a continuous spell, he can resummon himself right away.
Make it better. If it's tributed at all, it comes back. Like a really terrible by a spell card, I guess, because otherwise we have Frog Dark version 2.
Maybe add the stipulation that he gets banished if he leaves the field after being revived, if that's potentially too good. A more creative option would be to link him to the original Doll of Demise and have it reference the Arcana duel. I know we don't need more Dark Magician support, but perhaps it can just search Ectoplasmer when it's summoned, or have a nasty effect when Ectoplasmer is on the field, like being able to tribute your opponent's monsters for Ectoplasmer instead of your own. Since we never got original Doll of Demise in card form, you could even just call the retrained Doll of Demise and pretend it was never a normal monster to begin with. It'll be like how Orgoth the Relentless got a lot more effects in real life than what was printed on it in the anime. There's even another anime-related direction you could go with the retrain.
There was like some point in GX, not just Jinzo, but there was that dude who had like random Malice Doll of Demise support cards. Doll, Hammer, Silent Pain, Silent Torment. If I recall correctly, they just did like a little bit of burn damage. Activate from your hands during the opponent's turn. It's a hand trap, huh? While Silent Pain is in your graveyard, remove this card from play to inflict 1000 damage. Okay, so it's a burn deck, but you could give it new effects. Just use the artwork, it's cool.
Actually, look at Silent Space. That one's got a destruction effect.
While Silent Pain is in your graveyard. Oh wow, they all need the spell in the grave. Well, that's interesting. Do something with that.
Also, to clarify, most of these spells were used by those forgettable mask guys in GX, but Dollhammer was understandably used by Alice the Wandering Doll, a living doll who could duel, so if they ever make her archetype playable in real life, being Doll Parts and Doll Chimera, I could see them lumping a Doll of Demise retrain in there. Make him the Stratos of the archetype, and he can search a doll part on summon, Boom, new effect right there. Maybe even add malice or demise to all the doll parts names to link them together as an archetype.
Also, you can't really use the demise name for an archetype thing because then you could search Demise of the Land, which I don't think Konami's into.
And Demise, King of Armageddon.
And Card of Demise.
Oh no, guys, we didn't even talk about the best card to search with Demise cards. The Jowls of Dark Demise. What's not to be disappointed about with Jowls of Dark Demise?
Number 6, Frog the Jam. I feel like a retrain here is a slam dunk for Konami. Frog the Jam is such a self-imposed meme due to the accept Frog the Jam clause on all the older Frog cards since he technically wasn't in the Frog archetype. They just have to retrain Frog the Jam to count as actual Frog support, and you got yourself a hit. What's his level? 2? Perfect, he already goes with the Frog support and sprites. Since he's already level 2, just give him an effect that works with what the Frogs do, whether it's for swarm summoning or just letting you dump more Frogs into the graveyard. Frog effects are either weak or borderline broken where at least one of them is banned from every format of the game. I'm fine with a weak effect for new Frog the Jam, I just want Frog the Jam to finally get recognition as a Frog so these Frogs can pull off their combos, including Frog the Jam. We discussed the history of Frog the Jam's name in our translated name list, but to re-summarize why he used to be excluded from Frog effects to a point where they had to change his name, the Frog archetype in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is known as Geru in Japanese, while the Toad support monsters are called Keru in Japanese. Toad or Keru monsters support Frog monsters, but Frog or Geru effects cannot search or work with Toad monsters, they only support other Frog monsters. With Frog the Jam being created years before either type of monster was conceived, his Japanese name was simply Keru Slime, or Toad Slime, so he did not count as a part of the Frog archetype retroactively from the beginning. But since the localizers did not know Frog and Toad would be monsters in the future, they just called him Frog the Jam since it sounded cool. And I agree, Frog the Jam indeed sounds cooler than Slime Toad. It was just like Summon Skull not being localized to have Archfiend in his name before that became an archetype. However, with Frog the Jam not being a frog in Japanese, Frog effects in English specifically excluded him, with clauses saying, except for Frog the Jam, to have consistency in effects between languages, making it a meme of how game-breaking it would have been to have this random normal monster that was an exclusive McDonald's giveaway card in the US be in the Frog archetype internationally, but not in Japan. It was just pack filler in Japan. Like, Froggy Force Field sounds like such a rude card with the clause. It protects all Frog monsters except for Frog the Jam. Like, it sounds like it willfully shuts itself off if you try using it with Frog the Jam simply because it doesn't like it. Eventually, they renamed him Slime Toad to prevent the clause from ever being needed again, but the damage was already done. Now Frog the Jam's existence was alerted to all, and you might as well give the people what they want and make him a true frog. You can even keep both names and just call him Frog the Jam hyphen the Slime Toad.
I think they should retrain it to be Toad the Slime, and it supports both the frog and the slime archetype, so we can get some weird tribute frog engine for Winged Dragon of Ra once again.
If you want to get Jam Breeding Machine and Jam Defender going, you could just do a Frog the Jam retrain and just have a bunch of jam. Of course, if you make a whole bunch of 2s, you do have to worry about, like, hey, this could be too good for Sprite, or irrelevant for Sprite, since Sprite Elf is being banned in every single format now. But if you want to make, like, its own specific links that specifically need tokens, then you could actually, like, do something with just the jam.
Frog Jam Tier 0, let's go.
By the way, I just realized if you made an archetype of jam cards, you could search Ojamas. I don't think they should change that. I think that should be built in.
Number 5, the Attribute Recruiters. So Konami kinda did this one for us when they retrained Mystic Tomato into Mystic Potato. So we're just gonna pretend that the recruiters deserve 2 retrains. The Attribute Recruiters were staples of decks in classic Yu-Gi-Oh!, being monsters that represented each major attribute, who, when destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, could special summon another monster with their attribute with 1500 or less attack points from your deck. Incredibly useful back in the day. Mystic Tomato for dark, Shining Angel for light, Giant Rat for earth, Mother Grizzly for water, UFO Turtle for fire, and Flying Kamakiri #1 for wind. They also inspired similar recruiters for specific types, some of which ironically got retrains or new forms before the original recruiters monsters did. But over 20 years later, we finally saw a new form for one of these attribute recruiters. With Dark being the most supported attribute back in the day, and I think it is still now, the Dark recruiter Mystic Tomato seemed like he saw the most play of the bunch, so he was the first, and as of this video, the only attribute recruiter to get a retrain with Mystic Potato. It almost does the same thing as Tomato, only when it's destroyed by card effect rather than battle, which is easily a more controllable effect, since many good effects let you pop a card or need you to destroy one of your own cards to resolve, which is supposed to be a negative effect, but Potato turns that into a free search. For the other 5 recruiters, just retrain them to have Potato's effect for the respective attribute. Easy. Konami did our work for us by making the effect, so here's the funny potential names we were going to give the recruiters if they were retrained.
Grandmother Grizzly, Shining Arc Lord Angel, Mystic Tomato Patch, UFO Fleet Turtle, Giant Rat King, and Flying Kamakiri number 3.
I'm just a force of chaos. I'm like breaking all the retrain rules. Mystic Cherry in Mado. Naturia Cherry Mystic in Mado.
My idea for the retrains, aside from what Potato does, would be to make them all Link monsters like the other major attribute-focused monster series, as in the Charmers and the Boosters. Those became Link 2s and are handy in decks that play a single attribute. Make the recruiters Link monsters with the same type of summoning conditions as the Boosters or the Charmers, and give them their old special summoning effect when destroyed by battle, but maybe add a new effect that uses their link arrows, like any monster they point to becomes their attribute. Maybe you could even have it where if the monsters that they point to get destroyed by battle, you can activate their special summoning effect. I know battle destruction effects aren't that good anymore, but these cards would mostly just be here for the throwback. Number 4.
Mr. Top 10 List. We are forgetting one of the most important series of cards that need to be retrained, and those 4 cards are Aitsu, Soitsu, Koitsu, and Doitsu. We need the Parodius archetype.
Oh wow, that's a real good one. I was just gonna make this an entry about a Griffor retrain, but this is much better. Carry on.
Okay, yeah, Parodius, guys, that is near and dear to my heart. Not only because I actually like play a fair amount of Gradius and a little bit of Parodius, that game is so hard, but as an old playground Yu-Gi-Oh guy, they were the coolest. Like, you could make their attack huge. Obviously, you'd have to do something else these days, but like, people want these cards to succeed. Everyone loves these cards and wants them to win. Mr. Top 10 List remembers, back when we were playing Duel Links, I think someone actually got to a very high rank with invoked Parodius guys. They didn't use the Parodius guys, they just used them as like Alistair the Invoker fuel, and like had that engine carry them to King of Games, but I'm still so happy they did.
I covered these guys in more detail on my cards based on Konami games list, but basically, there are 2 normal monsters that have specific Union monster support of another guy on a paper airplane. They equip to their respective normal monster and raise their attack real high, and that's it. Aitsu gets more attack and piercing with his guy, so as a trade-off, they made him a level 5 normal monster with 100 attack points. They really wanted to make him bad without his Union support.
I think they should all have a Cyber Dragon effect now. That's it. They all can be special summoned if your opponent controls a monster and you do not, and then the Union monsters don't. The Union monsters stay almost exactly the same, but they give better effects. I want to be clear. I want them to stay utterly terrible. They cannot be good.
I want them to be, you know, like, at least usable in some sense. And, like, it is hard to make Union cards good, or even usable. ABC figured it out, and very little has done stuff since then. And Aitsu, Kaitsu, Koitsu, and Doitsu really just equip one to the other and get a lot of attack. So, obviously, you'd need something else, and there's a lot of space there, so, like, it would be tricky for us to figure out what that would be.
Since the Aitsu guys are from the Parodius games, which parody the Gradius games, maybe they can make these retrains related to the Gradius series of Yu-Gi-Oh monsters. I know that's more battle phase effects, so they'd be slow still, but they could benefit from being a part of some other archetype too.
There is one clause with all 4 of them that could let you search Fairy Union. If you just made a Fairy Union archetype with these 4, you could also just have other Parodius characters, like the squid with the hat, and also A-Team. Why not?
They also need a retrain of A-Team Trap Disposal Unit. Give us B-Team Spell Disposal Unit.
Wait. A-Team's a machine. A-Team Trap Disposal Unit, which has the 4 fairy cards on it, is a machine.
It's a fire machine, yeah.
Why?
Number 3, the Dark Scorpions. The Dark Scorpions are long overdue for a retrain. They had them as a group as a single monster, but I am looking at when they split them up into 5 different monsters. They're one of the first archetypes, next to Archfiend and Gravekeepers, but while Archfiend continues to get their own support and be integrated into other archetypes, and Gravekeepers got support and then turned into Necro Valley Stun, the Dark Scorpions stayed a bad archetype with no support. So let's retrain all 5 to be less bad, or at least give them some support spells or traps. Their focus is on hand and deck destruction, where when they inflict battle damage, you can pick one of 2 effects, where they usually mill cards from your opponent's deck, force them to randomly discard or shuffle cards from the hand into the deck, or bounce cards on the field. The exception is Monet the Thorn, who searches Dark Scorpions or gets them from the graveyard when she inflicts battle damage. Their old gimmick was getting their leader Don Zalug on the field, who didn't have Dark Scorpion in his name, so he was not searchable with Monet. Then you use Mustering of the Dark Scorpions, which lets you special summon as many Dark Scorpions from your hand as long as there's no duplicate names, meaning you either have to have luck to get the other 4 members in your hand, or draw all of your reinforcements of the army to search them, since they are level 4 or lower warriors, except Gorg, who's level 5 for some reason, with 1800 attack points. I guess they made him level 5 because he's a big dude.
If you need to tribute someone to get the same stats as Blindly Loyal Goblin, or weaker than Gemini Elf in 2002, play better cards.
Weaker than Mechanical Chaser.
It is weaker than Mechanical Chaser. Shout out to Mechanical Chaser.
While you don't have to summon all 4 other members with Mustering, their gimmick is the Trap Dark Scorpion combination, which needs all 5 members on the field to activate, where they can all attack directly, with their attack points being lowered to 400 each, because that's much too overpowered otherwise, and then you trigger all of their effects for mass destruction. Okay, maybe less destruction and more just a nuisance, but still, it's cool when you can pull it off. That being said, you're never gonna pull this off, but even if you do, sending cards to your opponent's graveyard may just give them an advantage in the modern game, so you would need to give one of the Dark Scorpions an effect or maybe a support spell that does something like End of Anubis or Abyss Dweller. You need to lock down their graveyard so they can't get those effects. Then it could conceivably work. The 2 easiest effect redesigns for me would be Monet and Gorg. For Monet, give her a Stratos-like effect where she searches a Dark Scorpion on summon, or a Junk Synchron style effect where she revives one from the graveyard. If you want to keep all the Dark Scorpions battle phase oriented, make her like Blackwing Shura or Metaphys Ragnarok, where she can special summon a Dark Scorpion from the deck if she destroys a monster or inflicts damage. For Gorg, assuming he's still level 5, give him the War Rock or Amazoness War Chief effect, where he can summon himself without tribute if you control no monsters or only monsters from your archetype to get around his level. And for the rest of them, I'm sure you could make their effects more devastating.
I was thinking about how to retrain this. All of them have like when inflict battle damage do thing, and you could do that and like make it easier for them to inflict battle damage, or maybe like some kind of float to disincentivize removing them before the battle phase. And as I was thinking about that, I realized I was just making War Rock 2. So another idea, give them their effects and take away the battle damage clause. Also make Don Zalug a Dark Scorpion. That is like priority 1.
Maybe they get more of the effects if they have more team members on the field.
If you control a certain number of Dark Scorpion cards on your field or graveyard, or like have every name in the field or graveyard do this really nice thing, like Deskbot Base or that one Mech Knight card.
No. Hear me out. We have new Dark Scorpions, and we have their leader, Chick the Brave.
Character development.
He basically just looks like Don Zalug with blonde hair and a beard. And then it's like the descendants of the rest of the other Dark Scorpions. And the big issue is their archetype is around about milling. That is good for the opponent nowadays. This needs to be basically Runic on steroids.
They have like milling options, but the non-mills are not bad. Chick the Yellow's a compulse, Gorg's a back to square 1.
Yeah, they need effects that bounce or retreat, because they're hit and run type guys. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and we're gonna design 5 new cards, but
it's either got to be something with battle damage or something with like field disruption and leave, and then like a lot of Dark Scorpion names. It would be confusing, and I feel like if you keep the original cards in there, you'd have to do some really pushed individual cards, like a BEF Zelos kind of thing.
Oh, we don't want to do BEF Zelos.
So in the end, we don't quite know how to fix them. awesome. But we got a whole bunch of jumbled ideas, so use those, Konami. Number 2, Pumpkin, the King of Ghosts. The monsters from Bones the Zombie Duelist in the anime have yet to be retrained, and with how many of the one-off duelists from Duelist Kingdom had their monsters retrained to have synergy, I have a feeling Bones' shot is coming up. His strategy was having a few monsters get destroyed, and then reviving them back as zombies with Call of the Haunted, and now they can't be destroyed in battle. Or more, they're destroyed but immediately come back stronger. Call of the Haunted was a spell card in the anime, and when it was turned into a trap card when it was printed in real life, they changed its effect, where it now revives a monster in attack mode, which is a great effect, but nothing like the anime. I was initially going to say let's remake Call of the Haunted as a continuous spell that turns the field into zombies, but we already have that with the field spell Zombie World, and with other zombie support cards having revival effects that turn monsters into zombies, we really don't need to see the anime variant of Call of the Haunted in real life. So let's just go right for his ace and retrain Pumpkin, the King of Ghosts. His anime effect was pretty straightforward, where you increase your zombie monster's attack points by 10% every turn. When he was put in the real life card game, they gave him nothing resembling that effect. Like, I get that they can't have a percentage on the card, but I would have expected a one-time boost or small stat boost every turn. Instead, he gets a stat boost, but only when Castle of Dark Illusions is on the field, which wasn't even used by Bones. It was a card used by another duelist in the anime, so the connection didn't make sense. The stat boost was just 100 attack and defense per turn, and he was a level 6 that likely needed to be tribute summoned, and the castle was a flip monster. It was a mess. Just throw that effect out and relate Pumpkin's retrain effect to the anime, and to do this, let's make him a link monster. He can have 3 link arrows pointing down that give protection and boost zombie monsters it points at, to emulate how it boosted zombie monsters in the anime by connecting its roots to them with a process they called ectoplasmic fortification.
Yeah, ectoplasmic fortification spell card!
Just give any zombies it points to a stat boost every turn, I don't know, maybe 500 attack and defense, and give them battle protection to reference how Call of the Haunted prevented the zombies from dying in battle. Maybe give him some targeting and effect destruction prevention as well for good measure. You could even have him count any monsters he points to as zombies to really pack in the references. If that's loading up too many effects on one monster, perhaps you could put some of these into a Call of the Haunted retrain. Maybe monsters that get destroyed also revive during the standby phase as zombies like Doom King Balderdrock. And then you might as well just add Bones' other 3 zombies as retrains that support it, or just support zombies in general.
So, I'm glad you brought up Bones' monsters, because all of them are retrains. Armored Zombies a retrain of Zanky. Clown Zombies a retrain of Crass Clown. Dragon Zombies a retrain of Crawling Dragon. They're all already retrained, so we need more retrains.
And can we get a retrain of Battle Warrior while we're at it to reference that duel even more? Just give it a simple effect where it destroys zombies before or after the damage step, since he was the hero of that duel.
We have that. It's called Getsufuma.
Oh, right. Then just give it an additional effect.
I think we should retrain Battle Warrior. He's Battle Veteran, and he's got a built-in sword and shield effect.
It might be fun if Battle Warrior gets added to the Freed the Matchless General Army. Like, you could have some spell art that just has them meeting. That'd be cute.
Guys, we are completely off track. It's clearly going to be returned to Red Eyes Battle Warrior and support Red Eyes synchros that don't exist yet.
Oh no, you might be right. Do you think they're gonna do that to all of Joey's monsters, even cool Beard Guy and Tiger Axe?
Garoozis.
Red Eyes Tiger Axe.
Red Eyes Baby Dragon, but not Baby Red Eyes Dragon or Red Eyes Chick or Red Eyes Baby Dragon, but Red Eyes Baby Dragon.
For number 1, we went with another monster who had one anime duel with a wacky moment whose effect was botched when it was brought into the real-life card game, and it has a good chance to eventually be retrained for how prominent it was in its single duel. Number 1, Castle of Dark Illusions. This was the signature monster of the player Killer Panic. He was sort of a bounty hunter in Duelist Kingdom, who was hired to beat duelists who were getting close to collecting 10 star chips to get to Pegasus's castle. When he duels Yugi, the first monster he plays is the Castle of Dark Illusions, which sets the stage for the main challenge of this duel, which is that his monsters are obscured in darkness because of the castle, making them harder to hit since it was Duelist Kingdom and the monsters in field functioned more like a game of Dungeons and Dragons. The castle's effect was literally your monsters become hidden in darkness, so you try to attack his other monsters, but whoops, you can't can't see Panic's field, so they miss. Now how do we illuminate the field? That's the real mystery. Because of that anime effect, it couldn't really be translated to the real life card game. Maybe if monsters all get flipped face down, or you can't target them for attacks except the castle to emulate the darkness, but they instead gave the castle an effect where it boosts zombie monsters' attack and defense by 200 for 4 turns, and it's a flip effect. Why did they make it a flip monster? And Panic only used fiend monsters in the anime, which includes the castle, so I have no idea why they chose this as zombie support, and related it to Bones' ace. These duels were back to back in the anime, so that's the only relation. So with Panic's deck never seeing any retrains, how would the castle be a fun little gimmick for a retrain? First off, the card was a flip monster, and as discussed in the Dekoichi segment, flip monsters tend to stay flip monsters as retrains, so let's hope that they won't do that and the castle will never have to be a flip monster again. I'm not sure if you'd want to make it a main deck monster or something like a Link monster, but seeing how Labyrinth Wall was retrained as a field spell to support the retrained Gate Guardian stuff, I could see the castle becoming a field spell too. To mimic its anime appearance, you'd first have to give it an effect I pitched earlier, where it can negate or redirect attacks to represent the darkness. Next, you gotta have something to represent that yellow luster shield that prevented monsters from being hit. Maybe give it effect or targeting prevention to modernize it. Perhaps even prevent monsters from being banished, since banishing becomes more in vogue with every set. It also raised defense, so if you want to have a defensive strategy with it, go ahead.
All dark fiends you control gained 530 defense points.
I like where you're going with this, and I have a truly cursed idea for the Panic retrains. Because, like, it's nice to find a theme, like something in common. Ishizu uses Earth Fairies, and they didn't have that much to go on, but, like, they all say, like, Earth Fairy support. So I can't think of anything specific on theme for Panic, with one exception: weird stat lines. So what if there was a clause, if either player's life points does not have a 0 or 5 in the tens place, and then it activates a bunch of effects.
Here's my Galaxy Brain one. It's a field spell. You can summon monsters in face down attack position.
Wow, okay, so I thought my thing was cursed.
It's like Darkness Approaches. Discard 2 cards, flip a monster face down. It doesn't say face down defense mode.
It has been errata. Change it to face down defense position.
Boo. Terrible Book of Moon.
But yeah, no, if you'd like to make an archetype around either face down attack position or specifically not 0 or 50 in the tens place for either life points or attack, you could get a lot of people mad. And I think that would be the point of the Panic cards, to get a lot of people upset.
Finally, you have to do something with the way it was defeated. Panic was beaten with the famous Catapult Turtle flinging Gaia into the castle's flotation ring, where then it fell on his other monsters and destroyed them all. So if the castle retrain gets destroyed, it should wipe your field, but it should be in a beneficial way. To make this a positive effect, alongside a castle retrain, all of Panic's random fiend monsters with the unorthodox stat lines should be retrained too, where they all have great searching or summoning effects when they're destroyed, making a self-board wipe beneficial. Retrain Barox, retrain Metal Guardian, retrain King of Yami Makai, which strangely was featured on a DDD card, making me think he has some sort of unseen backstory.
Yes, let's give him, you know what? No, I've done it. Let's make it even more cursed. All of Panic's monsters get retrained as pendulums. We're done. Cursed.
So for having a real-life card that was nothing like the anime, and the potential to make its new effect a reference machine, or I guess a reference fiend, Castle of Dark Illusions and friends are our top monsters that we'd want to see retrained. Now, what did you think? Did we have good ideas, or can these retrains be tweaked a bit? And what monsters would you like to see added to the bundle? There's basically an infinite amount of options, so let us know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and we will see you in the next video.